Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
How's it going? Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone. I'm Niko Tamurian alongside the great Najee Moye. What's up, Najee?
Niko, what's going on? It's good to talk to you. It's been a minute. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute.
We got a lot going on, though.
We got a lot going on. I think that the last couple of weeks are proof that there is no off season in Seattle sports, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's definitely keeping us busy with whether it's a crack another storm, introducing a bunch of brand new players that hopefully bring the team back to prominence after the departure of Breanna Stewart. You know, one of your favorites. Forever ago.
First story I did with Breanna, she was 14. She was on the under 16 team for Team USA and won a gold medal. And like her aunt wrote my old station I worked at in upstate New York. I was like, wait, 14 and then Team USA, what? And then became a cool friendship. And one of my cool moments in this career was when her re-signing press conference before she left the Storm, but the one she stayed for one more year, and she's like sees me in the crowd, she's like, "Hey, good to see you." Like it was just like,
guy.
Yeah, like it was just like picking up I got to do a cool story with her and baby Ruby and Marta. That was cool.
That was awesome.
Shout out to Breanna. We hope the Storm wins it all, but if it's not the Storm, and I hope it's Breanna and the Liberty. But we got some stuff going on right now.
Yeah, we're in figuring season. The Mariners are down in Peoria. Not Illinois, but in Peoria, Arizona, trying to figure out what's going on with their roster. But also at the same time, the Seahawks are actually trying to figure out what to do with their roster as the draft is only a couple months away.
Crazy when you think about it that way. And I think that the last 3 drafts, including this one in 24, have been so intriguing because obviously 2022 was on the heels of the Russell Wilson trade. And obviously John Schneider knew something that a lot of fans and even some media didn't when everybody was clamoring to take a quarterback. Well, there's no quarterbacks from that draft that are really still doing their thing, essentially. I mean, Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah.
And then
the best example of that draft, I think.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. As we get closer to the drafts and we start to look at who the Seahawks may take, and that's something that'll be more evident as time goes on in this podcast. My one rule is that online sites that do mock drafts, they get a lot more eyeballs when they say trade or quarterback taken super high. And like, it just doesn't always work out that way. Now it did in 23. And that was intriguing, of course, because the Seahawks had the 2 first rounders and 2 second rounders. And that was fun in that regard. But here we are in 24, and it's intriguing because there's a new regime.
Yeah, that was a super money pick. That was a super money draft for the Seahawks. I mean, just bolstering that defense and the offense, honestly, just with a bunch of skill positions. But like, we're looking at the roster, and John Schneider's also looking at the roster, trying to figure out who's going to be on the team, who's not. I mean, during the season last year, the Seahawks traded away their second round pick for Leonard Williams, Big Cat, from the Giants. Will he even be on the roster next year? That's the type of thing they're trying to figure out. And they're also down in the combine in Indianapolis, which I love that the combine is always in Indianapolis, by the way. Just like it used to be the RCA Dome back forever.
When?
And there was a really just like, I don't know how to put it, very insulated because it was a giant.
The little bubbles.
Oh, a giant bubble.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was super cool. But like a lot of other teams, they're kind of, the name of the game is who are you drafting at quarterback? Now, given the fact that the Seahawks didn't make the playoffs last year, and given the fact that, some people, they have a new quarterback, or a new head coach and a new regime, maybe people are kind of thinking this is around the time for a change in the quarterback position, whether it be moving off from Geno Smith or keeping Geno Smith for another year, and then following up with maybe a rookie to start behind it for a year, like I've been pushing for.
Yeah.
I've mentioned it on this podcast maybe 5 or 6 times. Michael Penix, Michael Penix.
And now you have his offensive coordinator.
And now he's have his offensive coordinator, But I think John Schneider has been kind of like, he's obviously been inundated with questions, Niko, about what the future of the Hawks holds. This is a big transition of time for them.
It is. And obviously this is in the news this week because it's the combine and who Schneider and the Seahawks looking at. Mike McDonald is not at the combine. I was able to talk with him last week, and that was a cool one-on-one conversation. It's like you're talking to another buddy in your 30s. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what's your hidden talent outside football? And he's like, I'm really good at Madden. I'm like, oh, cool.
Cool.
I love
Okay.
it. I love it. I love it. But no, back to the task at hand here.
I'm really good
One
at
of the
Madden.
things, and he's a Harry Potter fan.
Yeah, there you go.
It's interesting because, you got the draft evaluation going on. Then you have John Schneider saying Geno Smith is the starter until he's not. And that's just such a unique thing to say.
It's technically true.
It's 100% true.
Right.
We're all technically here till we're not. We're at work till we're not.
Yeah.
We all go home at one point, though.
Yeah, we all have to go home at some
I
point.
think. It doesn't feel like that
So,
always.
yeah, I know. Some of us do, some of us don't.
But, what I would say to that is my interpretation of that, and tell me how you feel about this. It's that, okay, John Schneider has been around this game for a long time now, about 15 years in Seattle, going on 15 years. He's at Green Bay before that. He knows that probably the best chance for the Seahawks in 2024 is Geno Smith, a back-to-back Pro Bowler. And even if he wasn't as prolific in 23 as he was in 22, I still think Geno's a better bet than any rookie you may get out there. I've been a proponent of like, oh, maybe they look at Justin Fields on this. The reality is it probably costs too much, right? Maybe it doesn't. Okay. The other reality to this is Mike McDonald is on the job less than a month. He just put the staff together. He's not at the combine because they're installing everything. The coaching staff is like huddled up at VMAC, probably getting like little Caesars and soda and just like, no, they're probably better eaters than I am. But you know what I'm saying? They're probably like gathering up and putting all that together. So I think that Geno's probably the guy. It's just impossible to know for sure because John Schneider could get back next week. And that's what he said is we're going to get a line when we get back next week. He could get back next week and like all 15 coaches could be like, yeah, we don't want Geno. I don't think that happens. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I just think everything's so new that he's just kind of like saying it to protect things.
What I think, and in comparison, we made the analogy like, okay, we're all here till we're not, which is true.
Yeah.
But when you make the comparison to guys like, Justin Herbert or like Taylor or like Trevor Lawrence, or guys who are just like their team, that's their quarterback, that's the guy.
Yeah.
So saying he's there until he's not, well, Daniel Jones is also the Giants quarterback until he's not.
Right.
So you can say the same thing about Zach Wilson, except he's probably not the Jets quarterback next year.
Yeah.
But it may be along the same lines. Logistically, looking at the picks that the Seahawks have, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there. Jaden Daniels, I mean, Drake May, and Caleb Williams, who's maybe gonna end up being number one. But after that, the list gets kind of like a little bit on the shaky side. The Seahawks are drafting at 16.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to be there now? I like Michael Penix. I think the whole entire city likes Michael Penix. I've been talking about this for weeks now. Is it a reach to take him at 16? I don't think it is. A lot of people do. I don't believe that the Hawks will find their quarterback in this draft, although I don't think they'll pick a quarterback in this draft.
Yeah.
Only because of where they're picking.
I think the only way they take a quarterback is later rounds.
Yeah. So like that's
third or beyond.
Yeah. So
and maybe even beyond, like beyond.
Beyond.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think by that logic, you'll see, okay, Geno's a quarterback maybe this year.
Sure. Well, and you remember me saying this last year. I thought that if Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud was available at 5, that they would have taken them to be the heir apparent to Geno. Not to that start last year,
right.
But be next. And certainly it worked out because Witherspoon was Witherspoon. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think that they've targeted, and I think they really like Drew, and he won. He beat the Eagles when he started and everything. But I think
great moment for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge.
I think that they know they did really well with Geno.
Right.
You traded the face of the franchise and Russell Wilson, and you still made the playoffs. You've had the 2 years since you got rid of your franchise quarterback. Instead of paying him the left, but the Packers did the same thing. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was the guy, and they drafted Jordan Love. Well, it paid off because he's hitting his stride now, right? You know?
I think every team would love to just copy and paste that Favre to Rodgers to Love type of Is that going to happen? Well, that goes to your scouting department,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah. I would say first round for me for the Seahawks, and certainly in the weeks to come as we get closer to the draft, get into specifics. But I think defensive front has to be addressed, especially if Big Cat doesn't come. Now you still have a defensive head coach looking at that unit. But, here's the thing with Naj is like there's issues like that you have to address. There's also things like I'd be surprised at this point if Jamal Adams is back. And there's still that issue of like they're right up against the cap. How are they going to get under it? Like, is there going to be a painful move to come still?
You forget that, back in 2020, the Seahawks traded 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. That's hurtful. Like that's hurt. And did they return the investment? I don't think they got 2 first rounders. No,
definitely not.
I mean, he had a great year, and I like Jamal Adams a lot. I mean, he's a very fiery player, but he's not 2 first-round picks. There's not many defenders who are 2 first-round picks. If you put that trade in Madden, I don't think it gets done, truthfully.
And I think that was, that's an interesting thing to bring up because that was such a win now move. Like, okay, we're on the cusp. Well, they didn't win. I mean, they won the division in 2020, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. It was like, and then by the same logic, you traded, a second-round pick to the Giants for Leonard Williams. Big Cat, great defender, but I mean,
you didn't win now.
And then also
you may lose him,
and you may have to pay him a lot of money, to keep him. So I wonder if now is a good time. I think now may be a good time for a hard reset, roster-wise.
Sure,
we've done it with the coach, obviously, but you got guys on the roster who are, you drafted JSN, who's a great young receiver.
Right,
and Tyler Lockett's been with the team for quite a while now. But DK could fetch a pretty penny potentially on the trade.
Got that market. Big,
but he's also maybe your number 1 or number 2 receiver. What do you want to do with that? K9 is also a young running back, but and the offensive line is young still, but in defensively it's like okay, Jamal Adams and Leonard Williams, and then also Bobby Wagner. How much time does he have left?
Right.
Is now the time to maybe maybe I don't know, trade out of that first round pick and then just kind of build through the draft in that way to get that second round, situated. I don't know. These are just things I think about.
No, here's
you can't go 500 again,
right?
Especially considering that the Niners and the Rams are that much better. Or at least the Niners will always be good than they were last year, and then you'll be third in the division again.
Right.
I said a lot just now.
But I think it's all valid. The first thing I would say is there's a reason he's called Trader John.
Right.
So something's coming down the line.
Yeah.
And the last couple of drafts, as far as trades within the draft, have been pretty quiet. Like when I say that, like there was a 5th round move, or they moved up into the 3rd round with Denver this past year. Another trade with the Broncos. But by and large, like they kept those first round picks that they got from the Broncos and their own from this past year. And they retooled via standing pat in those draft picks with Charles Cross, with Kenneth Walker, with Devin Witherspoon, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Boye Mafe. Like all those picks hit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So to that point, you've got this young core. I tend to think they'll keep the first rounder because they already gave up the second rounder.
Right.
However, don't count on anything with this team and John Schneider. I love how active he is, and I love that. Now, have all the moves hit like we talked about Jamal Adams? No, but I love the idea that they're willing to always look at what may be out there.
Right.
Trading Russell Wilson, I remember at the time, I was like, I don't think this is enough because quarterbacks being the premium that they are. Now, in hindsight, like, of course it was, like, because
like the return.
Okay. But the reason I said that at the time is you didn't know who were they going to pick with those things, how it was going to go. Right. And obviously, we didn't realize that Russell was going to be I didn't think he was. I thought
he still wants to win Super Bowls in Denver.
Exactly.
No,
and he may.
And I love that optimism,
Right. That's what I'm saying. You want that on your team. What I would say to that is, when I thought it wasn't enough, I didn't realize that John was going to hit on every pick. Right.
Yeah.
Even
that's shout out to the Seahawks.
And you didn't know that the Broncos were going to tank the next year and fall, give Seattle the 5th overall pick.
Yeah.
Like you were at the time thinking, even if Russell, I didn't think he'd be like he was vintage. I didn't think he was going to be vintage Russ all of a sudden, but I didn't think it'd be as bad as we saw. Right.
It's really risky when a quarterback goes from like And I think of, the only person I can think of is Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Who goes from like a team that they've had success with, at least one Super Bowl with, and then going to a complete different environment. And it's just really risky to see how that works. It worked for Tom Brady for a little bit, and it worked for Peyton Manning. Obviously, I think the Denver experiment has some time left. I think it has a lot to do with the head coach in Denver also at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, none of those were good fits for Russ. So
yeah,
but yeah, I guess the point here is the next couple months are going to be really fun. If not interesting, if not for the guys, some of the guys at VMAX stressful even, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really intrigued to see what happens at the combine this week, who John Schneider falls in love with, and when he goes back to VMAC, where Mike McDonald and his guys are. And here's the thing, you mentioned Penix. I think he is a first-round talent. I think he's talent-wise 16th overall. It's just I don't know that NFL teams will pick him there because of the injury history.
Right.
And so is it possible that if you recall, when we talked about that 2022 draft class, everybody had like 3 or 4 quarterbacks in that first round going. You remember this, right?
Yeah.
They were saying Malik Willis. They were saying Sam Howell. Kenny Pickett was accurate.
Pittsburgh's own.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And he was the only one that went in the first round. Malik Willis went to the 4th round. Forget where Howell went. If it was second, I think it was 3rd actually, but forgive me if I'm wrong. But my point is this. It is entirely possible that Michael Penix is there in round 3. He wouldn't be if I was a GM. Because I think the world of him as a person and a player, but I'm also not an NFL GM that's in these circles that knows these things, right? That's my point about like a lot of the narrative when you watch a show, when you listen to any other podcast and things like that, there's just this like, wow, the mock drafts out there have these guys bull crap, man. Like that's not how this goes. The mock drafts are people, just sitting there trying to get a lot of like, there's some good ones out there. I don't want to paint the broadest of brushes out there,
right?
But a lot of them are just trying to get clicks. And I always laugh sometimes. I actually asked John Schneider about this. I'm like, do you chuckle? Like sometimes he's like, I don't look at them, but sometimes people show me and I'm like, yeah, that's never going to happen. Like,
right.
Because it's like, oh, we have a trade. And I know I mentioned this a minute ago, but it's just not realistic.
It takes a lot to do trades and drafts.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
And also,
and most teams aren't willing to move.
No, and it's also got to be a heck of an investment to take a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you got to know.
That's your guy.
And you don't, even when you don't know.
Yeah, Geno Smith was supposed to be that guy.
Yeah, and Zach Wilson. He's like our favorite guy that's not in Seattle to bring up for some reason. But you know what I'm saying? Even Bryce Young, I mean, I still believe that he's got a chance. I think the Panthers were just an utter and complete mess. But at the moment, I mean, CJ Stroud went behind him, and right now it's not even close with those guys, right?
And I thought about this, is a team even ready to have a franchise quarterback? For example, New England's picking very high in the draft, and they have a brand new coach. And a lot of people in mock drafts that we talked about are picking Jaden Daniels to go there from LSU. Very mobile, fantastic quarterback numbers wise. But I can see if that happens, another Bryce Young situation where he can just get beat up and then just be done because he just doesn't have the supporting cast, maybe. Yeah. Or that, but then again, if you're picking that high, you don't have anything essentially,
right?
So picking on quarterback number 1 or in the top in the first round is stressful, Yeah. But also being a quarterback that maybe could be replaced by a first-round quarterback is also stressful enough. Like I'm sure Geno Smith is listening to John Schneider talk, saying Geno Smith is our quarterback until he's not. I'm sure he's wanting to hear Geno Smith is the guy instead.
That's the key point on this.
That's what he wants to hear.
That's
what any person would want to hear.
He didn't say anything earth-shattering. He didn't say we're definitely – but he didn't come out with some resounding we love Geno.
There's no double downing. There was no doubling down.
Like at the press conference when Mike McDonald was introduced, he said, I'm pretty sure that guy's at the Pro Bowl right now. Like that was an endorsement, right?
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't as strong as
on a guy that he doesn't
exactly
really know.
John knows Geno.
Exactly.
Geno's performed pretty well for John. And he just said he's the starter till he's not. This isn't a knock on John. It's just that if there was an absolute and utter commitment, you would think that it would be maybe stronger.
Geno's the guy. He's going to get a big contract. But Geno's also been in the league for quite a while, too.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires, so to speak,
Because he was a backup for so long.
Because he's been backup for so long. So you kind of have to – it's an odd lens to look at him through, and can he quarterback a team? He's done it. Definitely.
Yeah, I think he's the starter this year.
And I can't think of anyone else who can start for the Seahawks right now than Geno Smith.
Right. I think he's the starter right now. And it goes back to when I said I thought they might take somebody number 5 last year. I think they try to find his heir apparent.
Right.
And whether they're sitting for 1, maybe 2 years, probably maybe this year and potentially next year as well, because he's got Geno's entering the second year of that 3-year deal,
So
which they restructured.
Are you thinking maybe Penix's 3rd round?
Well, I don't know that he'll be there, but I think if he is there with Ryan Grubb as your new offensive coordinator, heck yeah. And knowing what we saw up close and personal here in Seattle, that I have never seen a deep ball as beautiful as the one and effortless as the one by Michael Penix.
I still think about the Sugar Bowl. I still think about the game against Texas. I'm just like watching him throw, and I'm like, did anyone just see that? Like these are, and it may look different coming off his hand because he's lefty, but these are beautiful deep balls, honestly. And when you have guys like Lockett potentially if he's there, and then Metcalf and JSN, you know what I mean, and then K9 coming out the backfield. Think about it.
Right. That's the thing. If you do bring a new quarterback aboard, they've got weapons everywhere.
They got weapons.
Maybe you want to shore up the offensive line a little bit. I still believe in some of the, the young guys that had Olu and of course Bradford as well. And I think that obviously Abe Lucas and Charles Cross have established the bookends of that line. That's why, I love to see that first round pick used either on the offense or defense, probably the defensive line, but maybe I'd be okay with the offensive line as well. And then, somewhere along the way, maybe what's that?
Yeah, so you got to get under that cap though.
That's true, yeah, man. It's crazy.
It gets very expensive after. I know they raised it, but still,
it's an interesting thing because there's a lot of ways to go. You did not get, as we talked about, the resounding endorsement of Geno today.
Right.
He got a better endorsement than say Jamal Adams.
It's like if your boss told you, "Hey, this is your position until it's not."
That would inspire no confidence in me. I would if our boss Phil would never say that to us, by the way. He's fantastic. Right. And I'm not just saying that because it's on the air. He really is. But if Phil came up to me and said that you're my sports director until you're not, I'd be getting my resume reel together.
Right.
Without a doubt. And that's just because there's no confidence in that.
No.
Other than this very moment, it does not include tomorrow. It does not include the draft. Now, listen, Geno is the ultimate competitor, and he's just going to take that and run with it like he did when he saw everybody saying that Drew was going to start after the Russell trade.
Right.
And he won the job.
Yep.
But yeah, that's not at all an endorsement. And to me, that's interesting because he's gone to back-to-back Pro Bowls. You have this new regime coming in, though, that may want something. I'm intrigued, and I don't know what's going to happen. I would bet a substantial amount of money that Geno is the starter in 24, but I would also not be surprised in the least. And maybe even I'd be surprised more if it went the other way, that I think that they're going to find somebody not named Drew Lock as much as they like Drew, because Drew, I think, is going to get a deal somewhere to compete.
Right.
Like he proved himself beating the Eagles and making some nice moves in those spot starts. I think he did enough that he'll get a chance to compete for a starting job.
I could see him playing in New England.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
he did a nice job for the Hawks, and I think that earns him something else. But I could see them bringing in via the draft,
I don't see
maybe we know that John has always been big on, I believe in this guy, and that's why they brought Drew in as part of the Russell trade because they loved him coming out and things like that. And I think that when you look at this, again, throwing a name out there that I'm just it may not be this name.
Right.
Justin Fields would be great, but even like a Mac Jones who did not look good in New England. But you know what I'm saying? Somebody like that. I'm not saying Mac specifically.
Right.
But one of these draft picks from the last few years that showed some promise, they trailed off, and maybe being like, you know what? We have a better system. We have a better culture. And that's what they bet on with Drew Lock, and that's what worked out in that regard.
I think a change of scenery can be good for some people. I think of, Mac Jones did make it to the Pro Bowl his first year. Do you remember that?
Right.
The only reason I remember that is because I remember him doing the gritty in the end zone when he ran it for a touchdown. That burned to my memory. I'll never ever forget that. But it's gonna be interesting. And I think this is gonna be something we talk about on this podcast quite a bit. I think so too. The draft
it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be super exciting.
Absolutely.
You know what else is exciting?
What's exciting?
Spring training baseball.
Yes, and the sad part is what we want to talk about in our last few minutes here is the fact that we're excited about baseball, yet the biggest topic of conversation around baseball is bad uniforms.
Yeah.
The quality is garbage from like a point of view of a fan, but like
Objectively.
Yeah, if I'm a Mariners fan, right, and let's be clear, let me just, for anybody who's not familiar, okay, the jerseys, the new this year, Nike and Fanatics, they look cheap. They're see-through pants, which was even inappropriate when a guy on San Francisco Giants posed a certain way in his team photo.
Yeah.
Like, you literally have to blur that to put it on social media. It's gross.
The jerseys seem very thin.
They changed like and even like the names on the back seem like really cheap compared to last year.
I think that for the fans and for Nike and for Majestic is the worst. And Fanatics, I'm sorry, is for the worst. Is
Right.
that it's the worst part.
So that's who it's on. It's not on the teams, and MLB, I guess, endorses the deal, but they're supposedly trying to fix it. It's just sad to me that that's the topic of conversation. If I was a Mariner fan right now going to like buy my new jersey for the year, I'd buy a different 2023 jersey.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I've actually looked myself. I don't get to wear jerseys often because I'm always at work or covering the game.
Sure.
But I was like, gosh, should I like get a 2023 Mariners jersey just so I can like have the last of the good ones?
Yeah, the last of the good. Well, I mean, if you can find those,
you can find some.
You can find some, yeah. But they're painfully obvious if you put them right next to each other.
Yeah.
You know, the names are on last year's jersey so much bigger than this year's jersey. The numbers are so much bigger too. It doesn't impact a lot of teams. I know the Yankees don't have names on their jerseys anyway.
Right.
So, but I mean, if you're a fan and you want to buy a brand new Julio Rodriguez jersey, or if you're a fan of any team, let's say they have a brand new City jersey, out right now, you don't want to spend $100+ on it.
Well, that's the other part. They reduced the quality and they raised the price. It's $175 now.
Egregious.
Yeah, you could probably. I haven't been to the team store in a very, very long time, but I bet you could go to your local team store and you could probably find last year's edition, maybe even the blank one, but maybe even a star player on clearance. Not dirt cheap, maybe, but like, at least significantly less than what these new ones are going for.
Right. I think it's just really a disservice. I know last year a lot of the news about baseball was all the rule changes, bigger bases, pitch clock, and all that. Love that. Okay.
Amazing.
And honestly, some people say it saved baseball. It may have saved baseball, honestly.
Yeah.
This is fan disservice. Okay.
Right.
And it's also player disservice, especially if the players don't want to wear their jerseys. Now, some players like Mookie Betts are like, just play baseball, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
If it rains. and we luckily Seattle has a roof over the stadium. If it rains and the players' jerseys are, and their pants are see-through anyway.
Right.
Like, what is the situation? It just, it's going to deteriorate just like the jerseys.
It's just amazing that it got to this point.
Right.
The fact that where players are actually wearing them on picture day and spring training games, and yet we're just now seeing this.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
And I think this is kind of my go-to when it comes to not just baseball jersey, but any jersey, because, trades do happen.
Yeah.
I always try in my jersey collection right now. This Cortez Kennedy jersey is one of them, in fact. I really try not to buy current players' jerseys.
Yeah, it's always a tough one.
I'll give you an example.
Unless it's like a real franchise guy. Like if you buy a Julio jersey, he's locked up through like 29, barring something crazy. Sure.
Right. Well, I bought a Saquon Barkley jersey a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And
Sharp, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Will he be on the Giants next year? I don't know.
I
don't know.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards probably not. Of the Yankee jersey I bought is a Derek Jeter jersey. It's actually a Cooper. It's a throwback jersey.
Right.
I'm not imploring anyone to buy throwback jerseys, but you should. I think the Mariners the best. Safer. I think.
Well, you can be anywhere at T-Mobile Park with a Griffey or an Edgar jersey, and
exactly.
You're fine.
And you're
Ichiro,
and those are the classic jerseys. The
Felix.
jerseys that the Mariners wear on Sundays. There's the throwbacks, and that's a beautiful jersey.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that jersey is not the one that's going to be small numbers. I mean, I'm not sure if they.
Could you imagine that? We haven't. That's the part. That's a great point. Now we haven't even seen that yet. We've just seen like the Northwest green and white, and what they're wearing down in Peoria.
We don't know if they're if a throwback jersey is just the same throwback jersey they've been wearing since then, or is it just like a redo of that jersey? It's really concerning. I wouldn't say concerning because this is not the biggest problem that the Mariners have right now.
Yeah.
Or that any baseball team has right now. But for a fan watching the game, these things are so significantly noticeable.
Yeah.
That there's a difference. And Cal Raleigh's I know they asked Cal Raleigh about the game, and Cal Raleigh has more generous parts of his body than other players have, and he chose to say no comment in speaking about the jerseys given. Talking about Kyle Riley's nickname here,
Big dumper.
Yeah, he should not have a see-through jersey.
It's unbelievable that it got to this point.
Yeah,
I know that Rob Manfred said earlier this week that they're going to try to fix it, but what can you fix in a month?
Yeah,
unless you just wear like last year's pants.
And there's nothing wrong with that, I mean, and I think the Players Association is getting involved, and I think the players, they have to wear the jerseys, so that
you know what, it scares me, by the way, and right. I don't know if it's, again, I don't know that it's Nike or Fanatics or a little bit of both. I'm not privy to that.
Sure.
But as you may know, Fanatics is taking over the NHL jerseys from Adidas soon too, and so and we have the most pristine and beautiful sweater in the NHL right now with our Kraken. And I wonder what's going to happen there.
The Kraken Winter Classic jerseys are the most pristine things.
I'm so glad they wore. I know they lost on Saturday, but I'm so glad they wore those.
I was at that game at the Wild game, and it was heartbreaking to see those jerseys just lose the way they did. Especially Joey Decorda in those jerseys after he had the amazing Winter Classic game.
Yeah.
With basically a complete shutout, all blocks, and then just see a 5-2.
I know it was cool, and they were 1-0. But it was. We're going to talk about the Kraken a lot in the weeks to come as they get in this playoff push, and it's going to. But yes, it was distraught.
Yeah.
Here I want to give a hint to everybody out there. By the way, when it comes to these fiasco Major League Baseball 2024 jerseys, if you're online or at a store, and you're talking like how I just was, and you want to avoid these new cheap ones, you're looking for last year's, the giveaway on getting one of the better quality Nike jerseys of say 23 or 22 as opposed to this year's version. Look on the back, the Major League Baseball logo. If it's above, there's a little stripe that, if this was my back, would kind of go, it goes right above the shoulder.
Sure.
Like if the MLB logo is above that stripe, it's from 22 or 23. It's one of the better quality ones. One of the things they did with this year's jersey is they put the name and the logo, then the top. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you see the logo, the MLB logo below that stripe on a Mariners jersey, it's this year's. And you probably want to wait and see what they do if they fix these things or not.
Yeah.
So that's just a little hint I've noticed. And, but yeah.
And we're not getting any kickbacks from Fanatics, believe me.
No. Yeah. So let's hope they figure that out.
Let's hope the Seahawks figure out their quarterback situation.
There's a lot. It's figuring out season.
It's figuring season. I mean, you gotta put your thinking cap on, because
I think you just inadvertently came up with the name of this episode.
It's figuring season. You got to figure it out. A lot of places got to figure it out.
Let's figure it out.
The Storm had to figure it out. The Kraken is still to figure it out. I mean, they did sweep the season series against Boston.
Love it.
They're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. But then again, you can't lose 5-2 against Wild.
Right.
Yes,
especially this time of year.
Figure it out.
You're in a fight. MLB's got to figure out the jerseys. Mariners got to figure out if the moves they make are the right ones, and I think they are, but we'll find out.
Y'all, we're in winter. Daylight savings time is about a month away. 7 p.m. sunset in Seattle, coming soon. Seahawks, figure out the roster. Kraken, figure out probably everything.
and figure out how to watch or listen to this podcast every week.
Yeah, or we can tell you how. How do you do that, Niko?
KOMO News YouTube page.
Yeah.
And then, of course, wherever you get your audio podcasts.
We appreciate y'all listening and watching.
Thanks, Najee. We'll see you next week. That was the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast.